Ain't got time to.
Welcome back to Turn Down for What, your source for EV news and updates. Like and subscribe for more content like this episode. Let's dive on in. Welcome back to Turn Down for What. Another day.
Another potentially controversial episode.
Let's go.
Let's
We
dive
like
on
stirring
in.
the pot here at TDFW. I think Chris has done the best job at stirring the pot in the last 7 days. We had our little New Year's episode, just kind of introducing the new year, and then kind of just do like a real brief spotlight on our the Donut Labs and their solid state announcement coming out of CES. And Chris posted another episode of What's in the News.
Yes, sir.
And also a video on his channel, Bow Family EV, in regards to some of the announcements that were coming out of CES for the Donut Lab solid state battery, as well as the what's the bike company, Verge.
Yeah, Verge motorcycles.
Yep. Verge motorcycle. Yeah. And yeah, it's been we've had some controversial comments. Some people say it's a scam, some people say it's legit, but you know, let's start there. Is it a scam? Is it legit? Obviously, Chris, you went and saw, I think, the motorcycle. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So the motorcycles are definitely real. That much I can tell you, because I did actually go by. This is the video from the actual Verge motorcycle place. So I went by, saw them. These the rear hubs there, those are actual Donut Lab motorcycle motors. So they're a real company. And the CEO, Marco, used to live here in the Bay Area, and he had a software company that he sold for millions of dollars to SAP. So the dude is real. He sold real software to a real huge company for real millions of dollars. He's from Finland, which is not known as like a Nigerian prince kind of place. And you know what I mean? Like, they're not known for that.
No offense to Nigerian princes that watch the show. So
not at all. I've gotten many of your messages.
We'll still take your money.
Right? And so I went down there and I wanted to check it out for myself, and I wanted to see it. And I saw the bikes. I talked to the folks down there. They did not give me any proprietary information, as charming as I tried to be.
Did you blink your eyes and bat them? Did you do all the fun stuff?
Everything I
he
could.
He even took the Ford hat off for a minute.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. And
big time.
And so it was, I looked at their current specs and compared them to what was coming. They told me they had 600 reservations. They're, a few months away from deliveries. I mean, these are sounding like committed folks, right? I talked to them about what came out of CES. So I understand the skepticism. The battery that was down there was an empty shell. There was no real battery down there to be played with or seen. There's no independent testing. There is no current patents held. Those are all being filed. So now look, Jesse, you've been in the space of data centers and these types of places, and so maybe you can enlighten on this a bit more, certainly, that I'm familiar with. But my initial thoughts is somebody that has no clue about this type of world of patents and proprietary IP. But my initial thoughts is somebody that's been to trade shows is, maybe I don't want to bring something that can fit in the palm of my hand into one of the hugest trade shows in the world that's international, and even risk the potential of anybody walking out of the door with my little tiny battery. And I'm certainly not going to share any of the IP when I haven't secured my patent for it yet. And I'm not going to leak anything before I have to leak it if I'm working on that. And it's a real bike, certainly. And they say they're going to deliver this thing. And my other thought is, if I'm trying to scam somebody, I'm trying to do it in the long game, a couple years out, trying to get funding for something that I'm promising 2 years away, not something I'm saying is going to be delivering in 3 or, even if I was going to say it's delivering in 3 months, but I delay it for 6, you're still going to figure out the scam so quickly. What's the point of the scam? Maybe I'm being naive, and maybe I just, to use an X-Files term that I've used before, I want to believe. There's a lot of people that have pointed out different theories. And there's certainly plenty of reason to be skeptical. These great, huge claims obviously need great, huge proof. I mean, what do you guys have come on, you guys are smart on this stuff. What do you think? I mean, I
I'm
get
gonna
the reason
take
for the
Tesla.
scam. It just seems crazy to think it's a all-out scam. Why would you? Why?
I don't know anything until it's proven. You know,
Right.
once we see these bikes, once we ride them, if there's anything that's going to be able to use a solid state battery today that's scalable, it's going to be a motorcycle. Because I'm looking at my laptop right now that has a solid state battery. And if I take 20 laptops and shove them together, I might be able to make a motorcycle go down the road 100 miles. You know, so from a standpoint of usability, I think that's feasible. Software background, we know that Finland is one of the biggest pushes towards EVs. Our manufacturer's home country that makes our charging stations is out of Finland. And then they have their United States headquarters here in Raleigh, Durham area, and their manufacturing plant for the United States is in here. So when you look at the location, he's definitely going to be very interested. And when you look at what you can build today on solid state batteries, I have two lines of thought. I've been listening to Toyota, and I think that their hesitancy of jumping in when everybody was jumping in was because in their mind, they knew this isn't the technology. We want that solid state technology. So I could see them coming out tomorrow and saying, I have a 5. But even when they do, I'm still going to be skeptical until I get in it, drive it, and see that it charges that. But out of everything that's out there in the world, if I'm going to make something today, I think the easiest thing on 2 wheels would be a bike or a motorcycle. And as a test bed, a motorcycle makes more sense, I think, than anything, because you take his tire system and the way that they did their hub and take 4 of them. Now you take 4 of his motorcycles and put them together. Can that talk to each other with 2 seats in it? You know, so it's a good building ground. And, you know, do I think that solid state will happen? Yes. Is it expensive? Absolutely. Could somebody from the software area do it? More than likely, they are going to be able to adapt over technology from the computer systems better than an automaker does it, because they're 2 different types of areas to work in. So I don't think it's a scam, or I don't think it's true until I see it. He's going to be making announcements. The company will be making announcements, and I'm going to be very interested to at least watch it. And hopefully they'll be at ACT with a system set up where they can kind of show people this, because it would be great to just get on it and go around the block.
I don't know if they'll be at ACT, only because I don't see them as looking at fleets necessarily. It has been controversial, and it's gotten clicks and views everywhere it's been. We did see a lot of views, obviously, on the the What's in the News that I did. We have over 5,000 views on that one, which is just really incredible. So thanks everybody that's watched this. I mean, this video here at 5,000 views already, coming up on 5,400, guys. If you guys haven't seen this one yet, we kind of review some of the best of. A couple of days after I did my video, I've learned as much as I could. And I really recommend 2-Bit Da Vinci for anybody that is curious. I think he's done the best and fairest video on the topic. So I leave a link for his video in this video. So teaser, plug, cross promotion, go watch What's in the News, and then look at the description and check out the link for 2-Bit Da Vinci. His video is stellar, and it really talks about this kind of nanotube carbon technology that he explains very well. And it is this that is the kind of secret behind, or what he thinks, right? Nothing's been revealed, nothing's been talked about. This is the speculation. Some people have talked about the idea of a supercapacitor, but that's been kind of poo-pooed as a supercapacitor will drain itself over time, and it's not capable of the type of stuff that they're talking about. So that's been kind of like, no, that can't be it. So, okay, it's not a supercapacitor. What the heck is this thing? The physics say it can't be a battery. And so everybody said this is a scam. Okay, look, maybe it's not a supercapacitor, and maybe it's not a solid state as Toyota or CATL would envision it. Maybe what it is this thing that 2-Bit Da Vinci talks about, which is this carbon-based deal that I think he explains better than I could even attempt to explain it. So go watch his video, and it starts to make a heck of a lot more sense if you do. And then it makes sense also because he talks about it being green, which carbon is everywhere and is plentiful, and you can scale it easily. So they're only going to do like 1 gigawatt hour this first year. They're hoping to scale it to 10 after that. They're talking to the people they already have relationships with for this first year of production. This is still, going to go into things like drones and their motorcycles. And there's a Watt EV that has a skateboard platform, which I've never even heard of. So we're not going to see any majors coming out here in the next year or two. And we know how slow they move anyway with EVs. So you're still a couple years out if anybody even signed an agreement. Somebody talked about licensing in an interview. He has no interest in licensing. He wants to do this with his company. So, I mean, I don't know, man. Every vibe I get is this isn't somebody that is out there trying to scam somebody. But again, maybe I'm super naive and just wanting to hear what I want to hear. And the time will tell. And I don't think we have to wait long on it. So that, I think, is where the fascination for me comes in. And I don't know, man. I think that's just not to beat a dead horse, but I think that's just where that story lies at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think that we're dealing with something that's intrinsically a scam. I think that they have a unique technology, but solid state, I think, has been looked at as a future technology. But where we exist today in the manufacturing capacities and streamlining resource production, it seems like to date the biggest hurdle has been, EVs already expensive. Sourcing the lithium-ion batteries is already expensive, but manufacturing solid state has been, to date, in that quantity that's required for an EV, significantly more expensive than lithium-ion solution, which has made it cost prohibitive. Now, donuts claim that they can make it cost parity or even better than lithium-ion would be revolutionary, but at the same time, just because they have a ready model that's smaller, how you scale that, how you get quantity of batteries for cost effectiveness, I think is the largest thing, because I do think that the materials required to make solid states is more accessible. So it'd be easier to streamline once you get to that point. But if you can find a way to do it in enough quantity, that it is a great solution. But globally, it's not taken off anywhere yet, because I think we're still early within that technology in that scale. And so I think that a smaller battery pack for a motorcycle is going to be the first step. But I don't think the rest of the OEMs have just forgot about solid state. You saw some announcements even a couple of years ago about some of these companies starting to look at solid state, but I think that they are waiting for the technology to evolve. Whereas Donut Labs has come out and said, hey, we have it ready to go. Will it ever be mass produced in a Ford truck? Probably not yet.
Not a Ford. No. Not a Ford.
GM, whatever. Just put your legacy OEM name in there. Even
Rivian,
Tesla,
definitely.
well, they go put solid state in. Probably not yet, because this is an idea. Is it production ready? They say yes, which is great, but the cost parameters to actually deploy that effectively is going to be the major loophole that the major OEMs won't sign on for. Can you get the Verge motorcycles and the other boutique locations to run a model that they might sell 10,000 of? Yes. Will you see the Ford Escape go to solid state next year? No. Like we're still years away from that progression. The encouraging thing with this step, though, is the fact that the technology is starting to be ready to go. It's not ready for mass production in the modern day EV, but it's encouraging to see that it's being put in motorcycles, that they do have orders. It's not a lot of orders, but they have orders. And like these things are going to begin to take place. And I think battery technology is going to continue to evolve over the next 5 to 10 years. And maybe in 10 years, we have this, the legacy OEMs and the Teslas that make hundreds of thousands and millions of EVs having figured out how to use this technology. Because in my opinion, if anybody's going to do it and do it right, it's going to probably be Elon and Tesla first. That's going to be able to do it in scale. They sell the most EVs. Either that or China is going to come in and they're going to do it first, and they're going to do it in quantity. So your Zeekrs and your BYDs might come out and have all solid state in this whole new lineup. But that's where today, I think the announcement is showing that the technology can be used and that the charge speed's faster and all these things. Today, if you put that in a Ford Lightning, it would be $150,000 truck, and nobody would buy it. So is it a cool technology? Yes. I just think we're still a couple iterations away from actually having that in production.
Yeah, tons of good points there. Like one kind of segues into the other part of what's in the news, which is the second half of that episode, was the conservativeness of Ford, which was, to your point, they're not going to take some novel technology, because you're right, a bunch of people are working and have been working on solid state for years. And so here's this novel approach to it. And they're using the term solid state. And I don't think it's solid state in the way that we've come to understand solid state. They've got a novel approach to it. And maybe they're using the term solid state and even using the term battery a little bit loosely, in the way that they're using this carbon nanotechnology, if that is what it is, because we don't know. They haven't released it. They haven't had any testing. They haven't had any patents put out there, but we will know soon. But if that's what it is, they're probably, using that term generically because that's the closest thing to call it and what everybody would understand as a battery. I compare it to the way we call the EVSE. Everybody calls the EVSE what? A charger. We all know it's not a charger. The charger lives in our car, in our truck. But we all say, I'm plugging it into my charger. Well, they're calling this thing a solid state battery. Is it technically a solid state battery? People maybe could quibble about that and say, well, it's really X, Y, or Z, but everybody's going to call it a solid state battery for the same reason that everybody calls it a charger, even though everybody knows that it's an EVSE. That's what I compare it to, right? But they're going to use the common parlance of language and call it a solid state battery, even though maybe those with a deeper knowledge of what a battery or solid state is would maybe quibble with that and be able to argue. And people are getting stuck in that argument when it's unnecessary. So moving past that kind of nuanced language for a bit, I think the next thing is that people like Ford and GM are not going to run out there and take some novel technology and throw it into their vehicles. That thing's going to need to be time tested and proven, and they're going to stick with the tried and true. And with that in mind, the second half of that episode talks about, there was a thing at CES where they talked about their next generation, their affordable EV and level 2, level 3 autonomy. And people were out there because there were these screenshots where it talked about being able to navigate an intersection, being able to be hands off, eyes off on level 3. And Electric Viking, who was just on a crazy tear because in one day he put out, that guy puts out videos every day, a half dozen at a time anyway. Like shout out Sam Evans. If you ever want to be on the show, man, look us up. I'm sure he watches us as much as we watch him. So Sam, man, he was in a mood that day. He was cranky. And so he was calling Jim Farley a liar, and he was calling Donut Labs a scam, and he was just all over it that day. And so
Jim Farley's just a mean girl. That's all he is.
Just a mean girl. He's not a liar. Come on, man. Sam, calm down. And so Electric Viking was out there just panning both of them. And they're like, Ford doesn't know the difference between level 3 and level 4. And I'm like, no, calm down, man. They definitely do. And so it was funny because it goes back to our episode. We were ahead of the game 10 months ago. We did a whole episode on this, on their earnings call. And they were very clear that they felt that coming out of Argo, they had the internal talent and technology to build a level 2 off of Blue Cruise that would be a similar system where you could monitor it. But they felt like that if they wanted to go level 4, that they would have to license it, and that they were closer to licensing it than doing it internally, is what they said at the time. And we played the earnings call clips and we did all that conversation. So again, that clip also in the What's in the News description. Go back and listen to that episode, guys. 10 months ago, we were on top of this already. And so people overreacted. They were like, there's no way that Ford is going to be able to catch up to Tesla and do like a full self-drive. That A, that's not what it is. And B, that's not what they said. Ford is so nuanced and particular in the way that they speak that I even have to go back and listen to it again sometimes to hear what they actually say, especially on these earnings calls and especially on these announcements. So they really separated the two concepts. They're going to have a level 2 that is monitored and capable of point-to-point navigation that will take you through intersections and stoplights, but it is monitored kind of like what you see from FSD today. And maybe similar to hardware 3 capable of FSD, right? Maybe they'll eventually get to hardware 4, but it's going to be monitored because that's the way Ford is. Ford doesn't want you to be eyes off the road. They're way too conservative a company. They're way too cautious. They're not going to be out there like Tesla, the bleeding edge of what's going on, right? Then separately, out in 2028 at some point or beyond, because we know they love to pivot. Then at the right time, they will then open up the ability for hands-off, eyes-off level 3 only on the highway. And that means that you could potentially text or watch videos on the highway, and they are not going to open that up to point-to-point navigation, eyes-off, where you can do that the way FSD is eventually envisioned to be, or like a robo-taxi would be, because that's not Ford's style. Ford believes that on long road trips, to business trips or family trips, that's where the value to an eyes-off scenario would be, and that's safest on the highways, and that's where their level 3, separate from the point-to-point conversation, would come into play. And the difference between a level 3 and a level 4 is that in level 3, you are still responsible to recover in an emergency once the car alerts you to one. So the car would still alert you, like beep, 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 take over. And then you have to be prepared to take over. You can't just fall asleep and end up at your destination. That is a level 4. And so Sam Evans kind of went crazy about, you don't know what a level 3 and 4 is. No, Sam, you don't know the difference between level 3 and level 4. So we talk about that in that episode as well. And so that came out of CES. But yes, to your point, Josh, they're just not going to throw in some solid state batteries out of a company that, just rolled out at CES and start shoving those into Lightnings in the next couple of years. They're a very conservative company, and that's not going to happen. So, yeah, China is going to be the bleeding edge of that once they take these apart and figure it out and can mass scale them. And, this company is doing 1 gigawatt hour, maybe 10 gigawatt hours in the next couple of years. China will do 100 gigawatt hours of these things if they can deconstruct them and figure them out.
Yeah. And yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously a lot of data there as well. But I mean, that's just something that there's just a lot of perceptions and we were talking about this, Chris, we looked at the Ford earnings call and we had to chat about it. And then we rewatch it after some of these announcements come out and you're like, they did tell you what was going to happen.
They did.
But you just kind of were optimistically looking at it the first time they said it. Yeah. And then they did it. And then you're like, oh, I guess you did say that that's where you were going, but you were hopeful that you're not going to axe the Lightning. But they're like, we're headed towards EREV. They said that, but you didn't think they were going to drop the Lightning, but they never said they weren't going to keep the Lightning.
Right.
And so it's like, they did tell you what they were going to do.
They totally said it. They said
it is what the definition of is. He
said
so the big company,
everything they're doing now, they said 10 months ago when you go back and listen to it, and I totally missed it.
Yeah. And that's just part of, they have their own cryptic way of saying it to protect themselves and the investors and the stock and everything else. And they have their own strategy that we may not understand and we can question because there's been a lot of, I think, turmoil around, what Ford's done. But in that, that they did kind of tell us in advance that they were going to do exactly what they did.
You hear what you want to hear. I mean, we didn't want to hear that. We didn't want to hear that the trucks that we like are no longer here, but.
And I think coming, look, not just to criticize Ford, but, if you look at, it's no different for GM, guys. Look, GM wrote off $6 billion scaling down their plant. They're going to take one of their plants that, I don't know why they use the Cadillac here, because it's actually the plant that did the Silverado and one of the GMCs. They're going to convert it back to gas, just like Ford. They're not canceling the Silverado. They're just taking one of their big plants and converting it back to their gas factory. But they're writing back $6 billion. And last quarter, they had an additional, I think, 1.7 billion. So, that's coming up to 8 billion themselves. So this is a problem. This is a problem for us. I don't know what this means for the future of electric for our domestic automakers. And I don't have a clip here, but Stellantis I believe, canceled the Jeep and the 2 Jeep models, the 4xe
Yep.
and the plug-in hybrid. So and the Charger, we know, although shout out to our friend Jordan Schaefer over at Kelly Blue Book, they named the Dodge Charger, which Josh got to drive at CES, not CES,
ACT.
I'm sorry, ACT. I don't know what you thought of it, Josh, but they named it like number 2 best EV or something like that on Kelly Blue Book.
It's been horrible flop in the
Yeah,
the vehicle world, but it was a fun, like, I only got to drive at 10 miles an hour at ACT, so I didn't really get to open it up. But just I think that there's this weird dichotomy of it's a situation where, like, you make it like a muscle car and it's not, and the people that buy that are the people that love muscle cars. And so it's kind of like a conflicting factor where, like, I have never been into muscle cars, but, like, you know, like, as far as driven them, had one myself, I respect them. Like, I like it. It's a cool, like, you see them, like, oh, that's a cool car. Jesse probably would dive into that a lot more than I would.
69 Charger, 72 Charger. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
So in that, I've never done it. So getting into a sports car that had a little roar to it. I mean, it's a fake roar, but it had the little roar to it. It was kind of like, oh, this is fun. And, like, you know, I'm a big guy. I don't want to drive a little car like that. At the same time, like, I think the average person that's coming off of, I've owned the Chargers and all of these things that are super muscle cars, like, it's just not to that demographic. And so I think that it's a very cool car if you just look at it as a technology and what they've done with it. And there's a very limited purchase demographic for that, because the soccer mom isn't going to buy that, and the muscle car fanatic isn't going to buy that. And so I think it just has kind of made, that's why it's been so weird in the sales space. But, you know, they were having some pretty good deals on them. I mean, I think they had them for like $35,000, $40,000.
Not to pivot too far away, but on that thought, what do you think about this? One of the things that's in common with all of these kind of, you know, failed experiments is kind of exactly what you said. The truck market, the muscle car market, the Jeep market, and even when you think about Verge, the motorcycle market, these are passionate fan bases that are very specific. I don't know if I would call them niche. I don't know what to call these markets, guys. But, you know, if you're a truck guy, and it's interesting because Ford came out and said, they've said it twice now. They said it when the reservations happened, that like 70% of the reservations were not Ford customers. They were people that came from other companies. And they said it again recently, that 74% of the Ford Lightning purchases came from people outside of Ford. This meant that they weren't converting F-150 owners. They were converting people from other spaces. And the muscle car people aren't buying them. Motorcycle people, it was interesting when I did my post, I had so many comments from people that were motorcycle riders panning this thing. And muscle car people that pan the Mustang Mach-E and pan the Charger. What do you think about that concept? That some part of the problem is the ones that are doing it right are maybe Tesla and these, you know, the Chinese companies that are going after the everyday average person that are driving the hatchbacks and the SUVs. Rivian, right, whose R1T is an awesome truck, but it's their R1S that has all the numbers. Scout.
You want to target the people driving the Honda Accord,
right,
not the Ford Raptor. And, you know, I think the Raptor maybe is a bad point, but, you know, the average person that's going to go to a Tesla is the person that drives the Accord, that drives the Civic, that drives the Camry. Like, it's just a sedan car that functions to get them from A to B. I think that you're right. That, you know, if you have driven Harley Davidsons your whole life, are you just going to flip and buy a Verge motorcycle that's an EV? Probably not, because you like the feel of the roar of the engine and you like to rev it, and like it's just a completely different dynamic than you are. And I'm not a motorcycle driver. I'm also not like the mega truck fanatic. I was one of the 26% that converted from Ford. But that's because, for me, I wasn't driving the truck to tow. It was a pavement princess, and it was for my size and everything else. But that's where I think that the traditional American work truck, and I think that they would have converted more Ford customers if they had it more like if the Pro at the price that they had advertised it had
Prices
stayed
everything.
online. But when you go to boutique, like the biggest thing has been these boutique prices that nobody can, the average American can't afford it, and so you have to appeal to the fanatic that has the money to pay for it, and they're unwilling to pay for it. And so the Teslas and the BYDs have done so well globally because it's a generic, affordable vehicle. And I think Ford is trying to get there now with their new
Universal,
systems and their integration,
affordable,
the vertical
yeah.
integrations,
Yep.
manufacturing, battery
I
tech.
agree.
They're trying to get to affordability. And that's what allows them to get that, Maverick truck. I don't necessarily think it's about the truck driver as much. Like I think that's a part of it, but the affordability of it's an $80,000 truck. Not only are you a boutique in the fact that you're an EV trying to speak to towing and everything else, but now you are as expensive as a Platinum or a Raptor for, a Lariat features, and you're trying to offset that and justify that when you have your power boost that gets 25 miles to the gallon. And, the average American's going to say, I'm going to go 50,000 for a power boost instead of 80,000 for an electric. And so if they had the Lightning Lariat at 50, it might have moved better across the board, and towards the end with all the tax credits and incentives, you started to see that. But the second thing I think is that the dealership model has really failed the EV market because they weren't selling it. They didn't know how to sell it. They were misinformed. I think there was a rollout issue when it comes to the legacy OEMs, whereas Tesla, people just go online and buy it and ship it to their door. The Ford relied heavily on the dealership network, and dealers were sticking them on the back corner of the parking lot and not even bringing attention to it. And there wasn't enough education and structure given to the dealers to promote the technology, because I bought the truck without the dealer, but the average person going into the dealer wasn't going to be sold a Lightning. They're going to be sold the traditional F-150.
And there goes all the dealers that we work with on that, Josh. You just tell them they don't know how to do what they do. You're ruining everything. Now all the dealers hate us as well. So.
But the other side is the dealer then starts losing maintenance, which is a huge key of their portfolio, is the ongoing maintenance. I took my truck in at 10,000 miles for my first tire rotation. They wanted to charge me $150 because they have no way to make money off of me. So it's one of those things that, like, I think it's a really complicated issue. That piece of it's still going to be a problem with the dealership model, but that's something that there's just there's a lot of aspects to why you see some of those failures. But I do think the demographic's a major one. You can't make a muscle car that's an EV unless you intend it specifically to be a 10,000 car a year sales. And if you can expect that, then great. But if you're expecting to sell 100,000, Dodge, whatever the Daytona, whatever the model was, it's not gonna take off like that. I mean, they barely sold that many gas ones, and if you make it an EV, it's going to be a tenth of that because it's just not the right demographic.
I think the last topic I want to touch on and kind of get your thoughts on, and it came out at CES, and this one I think it went under the radar, and I think it did because it's still going to be a number of years out. And one thing Americans are famous for is we don't think long term, as we've seen recently by our current strategies.
Instant gratification.
Right. Yeah. If I can't have it now, who cares about it? Shout out Ford. And is that petty? Is it petty? I'm petty. Sorry, my bad.
How dare you, Jim Farley? No.
I know, man. Such a teenage girl, Josh. I'm so bad about this. I'm just my bad.
You'll get over it. Time heals the wounds, and you'll grow up and mature.
It heals all things. I will jump into my Lightning after this, and it will heal everything, and I will feel better shortly. But yeah, the other thing that got my attention is just some news from Geely, and Geely had a bunch of. It's interesting. You walk through CES, and they had a lot of these Geely Chinese cars. They had some Zeekrs there. They had the Zeekr X. They had the Zeekr 001, the Zeekr 7X, and I want to say the 9 was there. Shout out
You got
to
the
me.
privilege of zipping around in a Zeekr.
I did. So I got to drive the 7X with our friend William from Roaming, Norway, now called Out of Spec Roaming. Shout out to him. Now part of the Out of Spec family, which he already was. But now his channel is officially named Out of Spec Roaming. And then Kyle, when he was out here in the Bay Area, and I got to drive the Zeekr 001 through the hills and valleys and canyons. And man, that was a treat. So yeah, it was super cool. And so I've kind of followed Zeekr and Geely. Geely also makes Polestar, Volvo, Lynk Co. They have just tremendous cars. They're great cars, guys, but we just don't get them in the US. So one of the things that came out of there, they did this this interview with Autoline, and they talked to these guys, and they are looking at using the factory in South Carolina that is currently where some Volvos and I think Polestars, or they were going to look at Polestar, I don't know if they ever did them, are made, as eyeballing those to make potentially some Zeekrs, maybe some Lynk Co's. And they're looking at 24, 36 months out. And if you look at the timetable, that's potentially when some political things may change. Who knows? But they know they need to make them in the U.S. if it's ever going to happen. And this has always been my argument, right? Which is, the Japanese make cars here. The Koreans make cars here. If it's U.S. jobs, if it's U.S. manufacturing, this is what I care about. And if it gets the Chinese cars into the market, maybe this gets Ford's attention and GM's attention. And the Zeekr batteries, guys, the golden bricks, these things charge like monsters. But this is in your backyard. So I thought I'd kick it over to you guys and get your thoughts, because, it's easy for me on the West Coast to say, yeah, man, let's get these Chinese cars that I think are great, and let's get them in and let's go U.S. jobs. But this is closer to home for you. So I really wanted to get your thoughts on where you're at with it.
What I'll say is we have Jesse and I are a charging point operator. And so I don't care where my electrons go, as long as they go into an electric vehicle, I'm tickled. Now, I promote US-based job manufacturing. I think that should be a requirement, because, if we make BYD, like I've said this many times, if BYD was untariffed and was allowed to come in the United States, it would shut down legacy OEMs, because we as American companies, it goes to every aspect of manufacturing. We cannot beat the Chinese on cost of production. And so if they were allowed to come in, they're going to flood the market with a bunch of $12,000 EVs and even gas cars, like everything they would take over, and it would shut down every aspect of legacy OEMs across the nation. In that, at the same time, I do think that some healthy competition would help force these companies to begin, one, to have the technology promoted more nationally, but two, that it's going to also allow for a healthy dynamic between what has been legacy and what is now new and evolving, because we're seeing so much resistance from legacy because of what I was just talking about. The dealership model is structured one way, and they're favoring these things, and the unions, and all of these red tape has led to a very strong issue with promoting new technology in these vehicles, where Tesla just busts through all those barriers because they're the only really new company that's coming onto the scene, and they've been able to do it so well because they don't have that much red tape to get through to produce new technology. They just do it. Whereas even GM's done a lot with their, development of EVs and everything, but they're still stuck in a lot of different parameters of corporate and manufacturing lines and political pressures and all of these things. So I think a healthy competition would be beneficial. And if they're bringing their technology into the United States and making them in the United States, it will be a more expensive vehicle, but it also gives the opportunity for better cost-effective solutions to consumers, which would allow for more vehicles to be sold, EV adoption to grow, which will help the industry as a whole be promoted with chargers in more rural areas, which will allow more EVs to be sold, and blah, blah, blah.
At the end of the day, prove it to me. I like the fact that they're building here, but they've not built their plant yet. That's the other thing. Prove to me that you're going to do it. And Ford went out and proved they can build an EV that's a good EV. I think that for me personally, when they say, well, range was an issue, everybody was talking to us about range. For me, it was because my range wasn't what it said it was. That's my biggest concern. When I drive to Nashville, I'm getting 250 miles out of my 325-mile truck. And everybody has shown that Chevy doesn't have that problem. Now, Chevy had 2 years or a year and a half to develop theirs. So they kind of said, okay, here's what we're going to do to make ours better. If my truck said 350 and it got 350, I wouldn't have a range issue. I would be, that is my truck that works well. So when I see them pivoting because, hey, we were told range, I'm going to make it 700 miles of range. That wasn't it. The Silverado has come out with a product that does what it says it's supposed to do. And we didn't let it off the hook. So that's something that they're putting in a gas engine in order to make their electric truck do what I think a Chevy already does as an electric truck. So that's kind of where I am with it. For the bike, same situation. Prove to me that works. It's great technology. I think that I don't know I do not know if it's true or not, because I have not seen anything. I've not touched it. I've not ridden it. I'm still gun shy after Nikola. I'm sitting over here as a hydrogen person who loves hydrogen. I still think hydrogen will be the fuel of the future. I will not double down any more than that. But the people that have said I have a solution for it have all left. And then some of them came out with really attractive trucks or products that's selling and all this stuff. And then they turned out to be fake, or they misled, or they didn't really have what they were a $30 billion company and they went out. So I'm going to take anybody that says I'm better than everybody else at an arm's reach. Even Josh and I with our company, Power Up. When somebody asks us, where's your charger at? So I can go charge at it. We were waiting on our grants, but the one we have in Kentucky should be open. What do you think, Josh?
60 days.
Yeah, we're about 60 days there. One other announcement, I don't think we've told anybody. It's on our website if you go to Power Up. But we won, what was it, Josh? 55% of all of this last round in Georgia, which was huge for us. We won 11 sites. The next closest was 5. So across Georgia, you're going to be able to see our sites there. But the other thing is we got to prove to you that what we're doing will happen. That's the other thing. Where is my place to charge? When can I take my vehicle down to Florida with a trailer attached? We got a good friend that's on the show here who takes his trailer everywhere with his trucks, to the point he had to build his own extended range EV just to make it happen. So the question there becomes, would he even done that if he had a Silverado that has shown they could pull a very heavy load for 260 miles? He wouldn't have had to stop every single time as much as he did before. So for me, prove to me you can do what you're doing, whether it's in us with our charging stations, whether it's Zeekr or other manufacturers coming in, or a motorcycle that comes out. I'm not a bike rider either, but I am somebody that if I was buying a hot rod, kind of like a 69 Charger or the 73 that I had. It's a 73 I had. All of those, the noise had essence to it. And I just didn't like the fake noise. It's like putting a sock in your pants, trying to pretend like you're something. It just didn't add up. So I think that the right people doing the right job will excel, and the ones that don't have a good product will basically no longer make their product. And I think that we're seeing the cream rise to the top. I think Rivian, home run. I think they're doing great. Do you see a Rivian small car or a sedan? No, nobody buys sedans in the United States. Nobody. So if you have a car, you're in trouble. That's why Lucid, this past week, I read where the CEO said, I wish we didn't have, I don't know the exact quote, but it was along the lines of they didn't really like the car. Well, what if they started out with a larger SUV instead of the car model that they did? That would have been better for them. So I hope Lucid stays in, but Tesla's always going to be there. We know that a lot of these Chinese companies are getting bigger and bigger than even Tesla and even all of our car companies. So when they come into Josh's point, what's going to happen when they have all this technology? I think that the United States is still going to keep them out as much as they can just to protect the OEMs here. And I can't say that's if somebody wants to see them, I want to see them here. I want to be able to buy a $20,000 car that goes 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. But I just don't think that our setup here with the corporations that we got, especially with now that they've stumbled over their EVs, I don't know what that would do to our entire market here.
I just think they're helping them. I think the fact that GM is, losing billions. I think the fact that Ford is, losing billions. And I think that, with everybody kind of canceling and pulling back things, then I think what China's doing is they are looking at that long-term strategy.
Yep.
And they know, to your point, Jesse, they know that they can't do it right now. So what they're doing is they're putting these things at these shows like CES.
Yep.
Be interesting to see when we go to ACT. Do we see some Geelys? Do we see some BYDs? Do we see some
We already saw
Zeekrs?
BYD. I mean, they've
That's
been
true. We
there.
did. We saw
Yeah.
the BYDs at the last one. You're right. We did see BYD was there.
Yeah, their trucks are able to be imported. And I've actually reached out. I've talked to some people who are charging manufacturers that are in Shenzhen, and they've asked multiple times for Josh and I to come over, and they would introduce us and, to BYD. Honestly, I think that is a worthwhile trip just because other people have done it. But our viewpoint is, what does our infrastructure look like here? Because Josh and I feel like we are going to have a premier charging experience. I do think that the speed, the design we have, our partners that's out of the traditional C-store world, we are really looking at how we can make what we think would be the best. And how does that compare with what their infrastructure is over there? And, they got a lot more people. It's going to be interesting. And I think a trip just to see how they handle the EV mess in their country would be very eye-opening for us as charge point operators to experience. So that's one thing that we may end up doing soon.
And the interesting thing is, like, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were talking about our future-proof design where we have these canopies, these pull-throughs, like some of these really cool things that don't exist in charging. And they're like, wait, you don't have bathrooms on certain sites? We're like, no. And nobody does. But the issue that we have is EV charging isn't utilized like gas stations, and there's not enough traffic. And it's a very financial decision that you cannot deal with a C-store. You can't provide a full C-store unless you're in a super urban area. But if you're deploying a charger in a rural area, you have to be next to a 24/7 amenity or next to an amenity, because there is no financial way to make a freestanding charging station profitable with opening a C-store with salaried staff and bathrooms like a traditional gas station. And so when you're seeing some of these future-proof sites in Europe and China and beyond, they already are at that next iteration of EVs and EV charging where they can begin to look at some of those things. But in the United States, when EV production and adoption is capped due to whatever the reasons are, then you're limited on the road traffic to justify the investments in some of those other technologies. And so it's one of those things. It's cool and interesting. Jesse is going to be going to Europe next week, a week from now,
Yes.
and is going to get to see Finland or Sweden, sorry, but Sweden, Finland, Norway, like that's now a belt of EVs. I mean, Norway is at, I think, like 90% new vehicles sold are all EVs, and that's like frozen tundra in Norway. But you get to see chargers where you pull up to a location and there's 7 different charging station companies in the same parking lot. Like that's the next iteration of charging, where we're trying to just get a charger to fill in certain areas. And so it's always interesting to see kind of what they're doing globally, because the United States, we're kind of in our own little bubble when it comes to those things. But China, I think, has been the one that's really done like EVs and pushed it on a massive scale. And to kind of anchor it back to the early point, I pulled up this article that I had read. Major Chinese automaker GAC, Guangzhou Automobile Group, they had a pilot production line coming out for solid state batteries. Theoretically, that would allow 1,000 kilometers, which is like 600-mile range out of a solid state battery. That's set to be in small vehicle testing in 2026, mass production 2027 through 2030. Their domestic competitor in China, Sherry, whatever you call it, they unveiled its Rhino S solid state battery in October, like 3 months ago. that had a 600 watt hour per kilogram, which would allow for 1,200 kilometer range, was like 800-mile range. And that's supposed to begin to be put into batteries in 2027. So kind of casting that vision, like I had said earlier, like if we wait long enough, China's going to do it and do it probably very well with solid state. And the US is once again going to lag in that tech. It's one of the continued frustrations I have is like, we're just so stuck in our models. It's like technology is rapidly evolving, and you, in general, as an American, politics aside and all that stuff, like you don't want the other countries to do it better than you are. And I feel like flash forward 5 years and the BYDs, the Zeekrs, and all of the Chinese products are going to begin to be manufactured very well, very streamlined with solid state. And they're going to have 1,000-mile range EV that can charge in 10 minutes. And it's going to be $20,000 in China. And, in the US, we're going to be lithium-ion 300-mile range and trying to be getting under 60,000. And so I don't know the solution to it, but what I know is there's these companies late last year coming into this year intending on making these things to where they're saying manufacturing for some of these batteries is starting in 2026 and being mass produced starting next year. That's a statement that needs to be,
Well, and then what I could also say to that, though, is there's going to be people that say, well, why do we care? We got all this oil. We are now reviving the oil industry. And I agree. Hey, use what you got. But here's the geopolitical aspect that concerns me. It's not about using what you have. It's about going further with what you got. And the most efficient thing you can do is convert the energy the way my truck uses it, because I get more miles per dollar by what? The last estimate I did, even with the price of gas going down, I'm looking about 80 miles a gallon is the equivalent of my truck. So if you're trying to have a strategy against other countries, if you're able to use that energy that much more efficiently, you have more energy to use to other things, whether it's chip production or whether it's calculations and big data, whether it's manufacturing goods and services, whether it's processing aluminum that takes a huge amount of energy. If you have more energy savings and you can sip on that energy, you're going to have more at your disposal at a lower price, which makes your goods and services a lot cheaper than the rest of the world's. So now you're already at an advantage. And I think that's the part that people are missing here, and why strategically it makes sense. It's why you see a new coal plant built every 2 weeks in China and India, is because they're rampant. They don't care. They're burning or using whatever they can, because the lower the price of energy, the more they can make goods cheaper than us, or the more they can make war goods cheaper than us. They can create steel cheaper than us. They have more resources, and the resources in a geopolitical anything is what you want. And I think that, we've taken a different route, and I don't think it's going to be good.
Like I said last week, we have Venezuela now, so we're fine.
I'd love to do a whole episode on this. I don't know if anybody would watch. It is so complicated, and this is a California problem, but it extends so far beyond. I don't know that people really understand the energy in the United States as well as they think they do. California is a mess, guys. It's a mess. Phillips 76 closed their refinery in Southern California. Valero is closing theirs up here in Northern California. In
billions. April. They're just throwing billions to the wind to close it down.
The Valero one is the newest of the refineries in California, of all things. Mm-hmm. We have another one in Rodeo up here in Northern California. It converted to renewable fuels, which are so expensive to make that they lose money on it. There's a pipeline that goes from Bakersfield and pumps fuel up to Northern California, and it costs so much money that they're going to shut that pipeline down. There are no pipelines to bring oil into California. It's an island, guys. You can't get oil into California. It's impossible. So it is shipped in.
$12 a gallon.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Most people don't realize that Arizona and Nevada get almost all of their fuel from California. So 20% of California's production in gas is about to disappear. And California you can't just make California gas anywhere. Like only a few refineries do it.
Yep.
So people don't understand that 30% of California's gas comes from India. India, guys, we ship it in, and we have docks that sit outside of our refineries, and they store refined gas in big tanks outside of our refineries that's already refined to meet California gas standards. And we change our formula for summer. We have a summer blend, and then we change it again. And we have about a 14-day supply of gas. And when that supply gets down to about 10 days, the cost increases tremendously. It's such a crazy market. Nobody understands this outside of a few people. And it blows my mind. And going into the Venezuela thing, people don't understand the Venezuela thing either. They think that oil is oil, and it's not. The type of oil that you take from the California fields that are out in Southern California, or Bakersfield, that's out there pumping, is light sweet crude. And there are certain refineries that can refine that. But the type of refineries that we set up that were built back in the 70s to refine the Venezuelan crude, which is thick, heavy crude, can only be found in Russia, which we're not friendly with. Venezuela, which we used to be great friends with, and then when that collapsed, we get them from the oil sands, tar sands up in Canada. Yep. And those primarily go down to South Texas. So yeah, Venezuela, we have high incentives to get that Venezuelan oil. But that oil, when they say it's the number one reserves, that's all self-reported. So going back to the idea of the battery technology, right? Prove it. They speculate. It's self-reported. Nobody knows what's really in the ground in Venezuela. That's all stuff that Venezuela says is 300 billion barrels. Maybe it's there, but man.
Well, we've had a lot before all this happened, you know, meaning years ago, we did have a lot of our refineries that spent or oil groups spent billions of dollars to go there and do it. So they know where the reserves are.
And Chevron, and you know, to their credit, Chevron is very smart. Chevron has been there the whole time. They're diplomatic. Chevron knows what they're doing. They're there. You're right. So Chevron's got a presence there already. But my whole argument is this, guys, like, why burn? There is only so much oil. It's necessary for roads, for all the plastics in our cars, tangible, real things. And it is necessary for freight liners and for airplanes and for giant cargo ships and for a number of things that we are not yet technologically able to run things on. But you know what it's not necessary for? My wife to get to school 10 miles away. It's not necessary for that. And so why are we burning into nothing, right? Something that can be made tangible. So there is a huge bunch of population that doesn't need to be burning fuel. And we've made political a technology that doesn't need to be made political. And we've done that too much. And it gives power to governments and big oil corporations and energy companies. That's just the stuff that bothers me, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest sole point that I've always made down that vein, to your point, is, you know, we still are heavily reliant on foreign oil. We can drill, you know, like, politics aside, one side says we can drill, but like, it's not like we can drill the type of oil that cars need. And if so, we have to refine it. But like, we are so heavily reliant, to your point, 30% comes from India. That means we need India in order to get cars driving in California. And we need Russia. We need Venezuela to make US cars drive down the road. EVs, we can make nuclear plants. I mean, you can be against coal plants, but I mean, the point is we make our energy here, and we're not running power lines over from India to power our houses. You know, we have dams, we have solar, we have, you know, we have all of this different ways to generate energy as a resource that is much more efficiently burned is a bad word, but much more efficiently used through a battery technology for a vehicle than through oil being in a combustion engine. You lose like 80% of the energy, 70% of the energy gets just burned in the combustion.
You lose it through heat. So you're losing a lot.
A lot of waste.
There's a lot of waste heat in that. And that's the difference with an EV. You don't have as much wasted heat. I think it's like in the low 90s is what you're using when you're doing the other. But then you do have the idea of where is the source of the power you're getting. I live in an AEP service area, so there is a good portion of mine is coal. and there is nothing we can do to change that. But what we can do is offer opportunities. And I think in this case, the EV market was only dependent on Tesla to create places to charge. I've seen a huge, since even when I bought my truck to now, I've seen a huge change. I have no fear of driving anywhere knowing, before I'd be even like going to Atlanta, I'd be like, okay, where do I need to charge? Because you didn't have, XYZ I could stop at. It was, okay, I have to make it here. What if that one is down? I'm screwed. I can't go nowhere. Now I've got like 15. So now it's getting to the point, which one's better? So for us though, like to Josh's point, I just want more EVs out there, because the more EVs out there, we make more money. I'm not pushing any narrative because we know that it's more efficient. And at the same time, a lot of the things we're using create jobs in the Southeast. Our chargers, our canopies, our wire. We're doing it in a way that we feel like is America first, because we want to use our grant money in a way to help more than just create a charging station on the back of somebody's parking lot that you don't want to charge at anyway. And I think that that's kind of our view of this, is we're not trying to manipulate any of the other sides or say this group's right or this group is wrong. I don't know enough to know where all that's going to land, but I do know that if we have pull-through chargers spread out across the Southeast, a lot of people would enjoy the opportunity to hook a trailer up and take their RV down the road. Can't do it with a Ford unless you want to get 100 miles for the range. But we have seen on an Airstream, I've seen Chevys now that have got, or the GMC has got like 280. One person said they got 300 miles of range pulling a Airstream. So that's about the same as a 350 Chevy. I mean, you not as good as a diesel, but to me, it's a vehicle that's as fast or faster than the regular one. You can charge from home. You can now charge on those trucks 800 volt.
E-Rev.
I mean, it's the same as it's better technology than what was here 5 years ago in that realm. So I think it's going to be here. I think it's here to stay. And I'm excited that Josh and I can provide, as we move forward with these sites, a good, safe location that's unique enough for everybody to enjoy and provides the service that's fast enough for everybody to say, yeah, this is good. As long as it's like this, we're good. But I've had to charge it a 75 kilowatt that said it was a 350, so it's or a 75 kilowatt when I have my truck, which can take up to 150, 160 long-term. I've seen it peak at 190, but it's only for like 2 minutes and it goes down to like 120. So Kim Powers, we hit about the 160 mark and we stay there for a long time. That is fantastic for us. So, but that would be like 320 on the Chevy. And we've had Chevys that peaked at 362, I think, for like 20 minutes on their site. Huge amounts of energy delivered. That is the future that we're building, because that's what we want to do. And I think that once we get our sites and some of these other companies, the Ionas and the Pilots, and they get their systems out there and everybody has a 800 kilowatt system or 800 volt system, I think they're going to realize now the travel part that I was dreading is no longer an issue either. We just got to make it nice enough and unique enough for people to say, this is what I want for the future. So, and then get Josh's canopies that he wants to build.
Yeah, I like the canopies.
Yeah, we won't talk about that right now. We're trying to make a decision, but we may change up some things. So
no, I like the canopies. I'm with Josh.
Yeah. No, I think that we're talking about updating it from what's on our website to the new design. We just haven't officially decided yet, but that's kind of where we're hoping to lean towards. But
I got you.
You might see something new, audience, coming soon, but we're still working on it.
Yeah, and right now we're about 60 days from our charger up in Kentucky being built, and that's we've got the grading for the most part done. We've got the wire heading the way, conduit. That way, people trying to steal our wire won't know that it's in there because it won't be. I think we've got chargers are painted, ready to go. Our rectifier cabinets are sitting on a sled ready to be shipped. I think we're about ready to build this thing. So now it's just People have been on site for about a month and a half now, and they've done a great job. We had a great grading contractor that helped us out there. So hopefully Josh and I'll be going over what it took to get to this point. Again, timing has been horrible. We've got a lot of things going on this month with our contracts for these different states. But as soon as we get contracts signed and some of these, we'll start also talking about the timing of what we're wanting to do there, because we may end up hitting a very top timeline in some of these if we can. So, but yeah, look forward to that too. We talked about it last year that we would come out and kind of go over what it takes to build one of these sites. And we've done a horrible job in doing it because we didn't document anything, and we're because it's just he and I and a couple other people. And then now we got more Navy programs getting ready to drop. So we're kind of trying to prepare, but look forward to that soon. We'll kind of go over what it takes, the headaches we've ran into, and what we hope to accomplish out of providing this for the communities.
Yeah, it'd be good recap. Well, I think we have gone through all of our topics for the week, boys. We can get Jesse off to get his passport, and we'll see you guys again.
Yep. Well, it's been another insightful episode. We got more to come. Like Jesse said, I talked about it last week, reiterate this week. We have some building of CPO series coming soon. We're going to go to the site. We'll show off what's been done the next couple of weeks, and then we're going to try to walk you guys through what we've done and how we're doing it. And obviously, if anybody watching wants to, provide insights or comments once we get site open and they drive and test it out, we'd love to continue to take feedback and figure out how we can continue to make a better product and offering. But we've really put a lot of heart and effort into what we're doing, so we're hoping that everybody's going to be impressed with the final product, especially being delivered in Kentucky first. But more news to come down that vein. Comment below. Let us know your thoughts on this whole solid state battery thing. What do you think? And the Chinese EV market and how it affects the United States. Curious to know your thoughts. So comment below, tag us, whatever you want to do. Let us know kind of your thoughts so we can continue this dialogue. And if you produce any good questions or points or topics, we might bring it up on the next episode just to kind of talk about it and see how that fits into the grand picture. But we'll continue to be talking about this point because there's a lot of data coming with solid state, especially with the announcements coming out of China, but with US Donut Labs. And we're going to continue. We're going to try to even get the leadership maybe of those companies to maybe come hop on the podcast at some point and talk with us. It'd be great to kind of be able to further dive into that because it's obviously the new announcement, but I'm sure there's plenty of other announcements coming out of that space as well. So as always, we're going to continue to be on top of it and bring the news when we can. But stay tuned to Turn Down for What. Subscribe to the channels on any platform that you listen to. Go to follow Bo Family EV because
he just keeps going this whole time. He said I talk too much, and he just keeps on going with this stuff.
I got to shout out my boy Chris Bo, Bo Family EV. His channel is bigger and better than ours will ever be.
Oh yeah,
love Chris Bo. He's a valuable member of the team. So
49ers, his 49ers are doing good too.
Hit a million views, Jesse Hensley. Thanks to everybody. Thank you guys.
And
I didn't have nothing to do with it. I think I've watched it twice.
Playoffs. Brock Purdy and CMC are going to carry us to the finish line. And but that's it. I'm done speaking now. Been a great episode. Tune in next week for more EV news and updates. But for now, that's all.
Thanks for tuning in to Turn Down for What. Make sure you're subscribed with your notifications on to tune in to more EV news and updates. See you next time.